Good evening. The Prime Minister has unveiled landmark legislation aimed at creating one Canadian economy, a campaign promise born out of trade tensions with the US. The bill aims to boost growth by easing the flow of goods and workers within the country. There is a quiet migration happening, quiet only in sound, not in scale. You will not see it on TikTok or in a flashy Super Bowl ad, but if you follow the investment trail, the infrastructure deals, the energy grids and the server rooms, you will notice something impossible to ignore. Top companies, some American, some global, some homegrown, are turning away from the United States and moving operations, headquarters, capital, and critical infrastructure across the northern border. Not for better weather, not for bigger tax breaks, but because something fundamental has changed in the balance of power between two of the closest allies on Earth. Before we continue, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm and to show your support. Today, June 6, 2025, 5 major companies across 5 different industries have made the decision to invest in Canada over the United States. And their reasons, though varied, point to a pattern that is sending a signal to global markets. That signal: Canada is stable, the United States is not. Let us begin where no one expected it: the heart of artificial intelligence infrastructure. In back-to-back announcements, 2 of Canada's telecom giants, Bell Canada and TUS, revealed their most aggressive investments to date. Bell is rolling out a program called AI Fabric, a network of 6 new hypers-scale data centers across British Columbia. These are not server closets, these are massive high-density compute facilities powered by over 500 megawatts of energy, enough to power a city. Meanwhile, Tariffs is going even bigger. In what some are calling the sovereign AI factory, the company is investing over $50 billion into artificial intelligence infrastructure across British Columbia and Quebec. Using NVIDIA's latest chipsets and backed by a mix of public and private capital, this initiative is not just about cloud computing, it is about sovereignty. In plain terms, TELUS is building a Canadian-controlled artificial intelligence backbone that will not touch US platforms or data laws. The reason? Canada's evolving data sovereignty legislation gives companies more control over who accesses their data. While new US regulations, including national security review triggers, are causing concern among telecom providers. And it is not just ideology. TELUS's CEO said the company can no longer rely on foreign-hosted models. They want data trained in Canada, stored in Canada, and used in Canada because that is what Canadian law now encourages. What makes this move even more dramatic is that both companies had existing partnerships with US cloud providers. They are walking away from those relationships to build a national artificial intelligence grid on their own terms. And Bell confirmed that at least part of their decision was driven by volatility in US trade law. They fear a future where a single executive order could upend cross-border tech transfers overnight. That brings us to the second company, Strategic Storage Trust 6, a self-storage rat backed by SmartTop based in the United States. In a move that went largely unnoticed outside the industry, they just opened their 14th Canadian facility and their 12th in Toronto alone. The location, Jane Street. The size, 105,000 square feet, of climate-controlled units. But the significance lies in the direction. This is the latest move in a multi-year expansion that is increasingly targeting Canada, not the United States, as the primary growth market for private storage real estate. Why? Stability. The Ontario government, despite its well-known housing crisis, has maintained one of the most development-friendly regulatory environments for institutional investors. Interest rates are predictable, labour is organised but stable, zoning permits move faster, and Canada's population growth driven by skilled immigration and urban density is creating a surge in demand for storage space. In contrast, in many parts of the United States, new construction is facing record delays. California's permitting process alone can stretch up to 3 years. Texas, while business-friendly, has been struggling with land acquisition costs and municipal resistance. And in New York, forget about it. So, when SmartStop's CEO says Toronto continues to be a key market for us, that is not marketing fluff. That is an investment strategy. And right now, that strategy is pointing north. The third company is one that many Americans think of as entirely domestic: Canadian National Railway, CN. While technically headquartered in Canada, CN operates rail freight lines deep into the United States, connecting key cities across both countries. But their latest move reveals a shift in focus. This week, CN announced an $80 million Canadian investment into Atlantic Canada's rail infrastructure, specifically upgrades in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. The goal to increase east-west freight capacity through the port of Halifax and reduce reliance on southern border crossings. Why does that matter? Because in April of this year, US tariffs, particularly those on metals and manufacturing equipment, caused Canadian exports to the United States to drop by more than 15% in a single month. And for CN, that is not just a trade statistic, that is a logistics nightmare. If goods are not moving south, they need to move east, to ports, to ships, to other global buyers. So CN is adapting by beefing up rail capacity in Atlantic Canada. They are preparing for a future where Canada exports more directly to Europe, bypassing US distribution bottlenecks entirely. The message to shareholders was crystal clear. Diversification away from US dependence is now a strategic priority. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button to show your support to the channel. That brings us to company number 4, and this one is foreign. Spanish infrastructure giant Ferrovial just increased its ownership stake in Ontario's 407 Express toll route, the busiest electronic toll highway in Canada. With more than 3 million weekly drivers and over 100 kilometers of roadway, the 407 ETR is considered one of the most valuable toll road assets in North America, and Ferrovial is betting big on it. This week, they acquired an additional 5% stake, bringing their ownership to nearly half. That is not a speculative bet. That is control. Why would a Spanish company double down on a Canadian toll road in the middle of a global slowdown? Because US infrastructure is not what it used to be. Between congressional gridlock, stalled highway projects, and rising political risk in public-private partnerships, many foreign infrastructure funds now view Canada as the safer bet. Ontario, by contrast, has provided stable returns, enforceable toll policies, and investor protections that are hard to find in US markets. It is worth noting that just 2 years ago, Ferrovial had been exploring expansion in the southern United States. That expansion has now paused, and their Canadian portfolio is growing. The fifth and final example is not a single company, but the macroeconomic environment shaping them all. In April 2025, Canada's trade deficit reached a record $7.1 billion. Not because Canada is weak, but because US tariffs sucked out demand, according to economists. Trade with the United States declined sharply, especially in goods targeted by recent US tariff expansions: metals, electronics, and components. This matters because when export volumes collapse, investment shifts, and right now, Canadian companies are pivoting their entire go-to-market strategies. New investments are being routed east and west, not south. Port authorities in Vancouver and Halifax are reporting container flow shifts. Energy companies are reworking cross-border transmission strategies. Battery manufacturers are relocating supply chains entirely within Canadian borders, and quietly, government policy is accelerating that trend. Over the past 6 months, Canada has introduced new tax credits for electric vehicle battery production, clean energy storage, domestic artificial intelligence development, and rare earth mineral processing. These are strategic incentives designed not just to grow sectors, but to keep capital inside Canada. And the result, global companies are starting to view Canada not as a secondary market, but as a parallel center of gravity. In previous decades, a multinational might establish one major hub in the United States and a satellite operation in Toronto or Montreal. Now the equation is flipping. The Canadian facility is the primary, the US one optional. So what is going on? In short, certainty. In an economic environment dominated by trade wars, retaliatory tariffs, unstable permitting laws, and regulatory whiplash, and businesses are making a cold, hard calculation. Where can we operate for the next 10 years without being surprised? And right now, the answer for at least 5 companies with billions on the line is Canada. From artificial intelligence and telecom to storage, railroads, toll roads, and export logistics, the shift is happening quietly, deliberately, and in ways that could reshape the North American economic landscape for years to come. As states, including Michigan and Wisconsin, voiced strong opposition. Major corporations like Foxconn expressed concern about the ripple effects on production and supply chains. The US stock market reacted sharply on May 21, 2025. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped more than 800 points, about 1.9%, signaling investor anxiety over escalating trade tensions. US pork exports to Canada took a hit, dealing a blow to farmers and agricultural supply chains. The tariffs also pushed up goods prices, squeezing household budgets. Farmers and workers in export-reliant industries faced job and income insecurity, while stock market volatility eroded the value of many Americans' investment portfolios. After a tense start to the year, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met with President Trump at the White House on May 6 to discuss reopening negotiations on the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. During the meeting, Carney firmly rejected Trump's offhand suggestion that Canada become the 51st U.S. state, stating that Canada is not a commodity for sale. Canada agreed to resume talks only after the U.S. accepted 3 key conditions. Recognition of Canadian sovereignty. If you found this video insightful, hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss what comes next. Drop a comment below. Which of these moves surprised you the